Hello there friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. As young Star Wars fans, when we're first introduced to the character of Count Dooku, he's clearly a villain. Christopher Lee does an excellent job at portraying the aristocratic and menacing figure. It was definitely one of the bright spots of Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. He's the perfect mastermind and partner for Darth Sidious. His smooth, Mikasi lightsaber form combined with his sharp wit made him effortlessly deadly in both the political arena and the battlefield. There's just something extremely intimidating about a man who makes everything look so easy. But since the prequel era, we've gotten several very interesting looks at the life of Count Dooku. Through novels like Dooku, Jedi Lost, Master and Apprentice, and also the excellent Tales of the Jedi episodes that featured Dooku in the prime of his Jedi career. There are also some excellent Legends novels and comics that also shed light on what he was like before he turned to the dark side. And the conclusion that I've come up with after reading all of this literature is that one is not simply born evil and does evil because that is in their nature. I mean, maybe that was Darth Sidious's personality from the outset, but Dooku was always different. He was never entirely evil, and I would also hesitate to call him a victim of circumstance. I think the character would have hated such a label. But it was Dooku's strong personality that ultimately led him into the direction he would take, a disastrous direction to the dark side. And if you take the route of empathy and try to truly understand him as a character, you'll just see how tragic of a figure he actually is. You'll see that the experiences he goes through in life basically give him no choice but to pursue the path that he took. Dooku's decisions and choices were generally made with good intentions until he finally fell to evil. Speaking of good intentions, if you're looking for a lightsaber that totally wasn't pilfered from the ruins of the Jedi Temple after Order 66, might I recommend you today's sponsor, Ownersaber.com. Ownersaber.com is my go-to lightsaber retailer. They have a wide collection of awesome replica and original lightsaber designs. And just recently, they've completely revamped their store and rolled out new prices for all of their lightsabers just in time for Halloween. And today, because we're talking about Dooku, if you buy any version of Dooku's saber, notice the curved hilt there, perfect for the Mikasi grip, you can get a free dueling Padawan saber of your choice. Simply add the Dooku saber and a Padawan saber to your cart and the discount should be automatically applied. If you guys aren't interested in getting the Dooku lightsaber, check out our promo code OAS20, that's all caps, to get 20% off of your next lightsaber purchase. This is a great deal if you're looking to buy a birthday present for anyone or if you're just trying to get ahead on your Christmas shopping. So you ever wonder why Dooku acts so aristocratic, despite the fact that he, like most of the other Jedi in the Order, was taken at an extremely young age, far before his actually aristocratic birth family could have any effect on him? Well, one could attribute this to his personality, which was described as imperious and better than thou, at least by some of his peers, like Terex, a fellow youngling who was in his clan that always referred to Dooku as His Excellency. But the truth was, Dooku at the time had no idea who his true family was at the time. He wasn't trying to act aristocratic, he was just a very driven and talented individual who focused all of his effort and attention towards his studies and becoming the best Jedi that he could possibly be. This of course drew some scorn and jealousy from the other members of his Jedi clan. Remember, just because they're Jedi doesn't mean that they can't be shitty teenagers, which they oftentimes were. Anyway, I guess you could say that Dooku was advanced for his age and would remain so for his entire career in the Jedi Order. His intelligence and ability meant that he was constantly running into artificial boundaries set for him by the Jedi Order. Although at least in his youth, he really did try hard to follow the rules and control those emotions that were unacceptable for a Jedi to have. Now, something happened to Dooku when he was a youngling that rarely happens to any Jedi. While on a mission to Serena, he runs into his birth father, Count Gora, who is actually one of the major leaders of the planet. Count Gora had abandoned the baby Dooku right after his birth when it was found that he was Force sensitive. You see, Serena long ago was occupied by the Sith Empire. The nobles on this planet fought a brutal resistance campaign against these Force users, and they ultimately prevailed, but at an extreme cost to the local population. And so there was an extreme hatred for Force users on this planet. And so Count Gora was ashamed of Dooku and despised him, even though he was a baby, and he would leave him basically out in the cold, exposed and naked to the elements and the many predators on the planet. It was actually a very messed up thing to do to a baby. Trauma suffered in our youth can be the most scarring, and despite having an extremely strong personality and will, I think Dooku's encounter with his biological father wounded him in ways that only a shitty father could. Gora's hatred was so irrational and out of Dooku's control that I think it shook his moral foundation and view of the world. It also took away that security that comes with the knowledge that at least your birth family loved and cherished you before they gave you away to the Jedi Order. An illusion that Dooku could have maintained had he never met his father, and I think this is why later on in his life, he's unbalanced, and he lets fear of uncertainty take over his life and drive his actions. Had Dooku never went to Sereno for that mission and met his terrible family, his story might have turned out a bit different. One of Dooku's closest friends growing up was quite different from him. It was Sifo Dyas. He was basically the exact opposite when it comes to personality, but like a lot of our first friendships, they're born out of proximity and out of the groups that we hang with or the schools that we go to. Sifo Dyas was far more of, let's say, a free-spirited individual than Dooku, and on one occasion, Sifo Dyas revealed to Dooku that he had come into possession of the journal of the expelled Jedi known as Cleus Terradin. This journal spoke of a hidden Bogan collection inside of the archives, and the two Jedi younglings would actually sneak into the forbidden parts of the Jedi archives to access, which were essentially a bunch of Sith artifacts. Yes, this is very similar to the story of Harry Potter finding Tom Riddle's journal and breaking into the forbidden section in the Hogwarts library. Harry Potter is basically just Star Wars with wands and magic, instead of lightsabers and the Force. This little adventure led to these two younglings getting caught. They would be reprimanded. And this would stir up a debate amongst the Jedi High Council on how Jedi younglings should be taught about the dark side. One Jedi Master, an unorthodox one named Castana, believed that Jedi younglings should be exposed to the dark side in controlled settings so that they learned how to properly deal with these feelings, emotions, and energies. The more mainstream members of the High Jedi Council, however, were against this, and unfortunately, Dooku would never really get to expand his understanding of the dark side, with Jedi guidance, of course. Actually, if anything, he was pretty ashamed of breaking the rules, and that's because Dooku, at least during this period of his life, was really into following the rules and becoming the perfect Jedi. Seeing villains like Dooku as children really does fill you with empathy, understanding, and a bit of sorrow. I think the Jedi youngling Dooku would have hated to see what he would become later on in life. When I was young, I thought I'd be a dinosaur lawyer, which is not a dinosaur who's a lawyer, which would be impossible, but a lawyer that represents dinosaurs. Now, Dooku's friendship with Sifo Dyas would only continue to grow because of wild adventures such as this one. And as a result of this friendship, Dooku developed an intimate understanding and respect for Jedi visions, because Sifo Dyas was regularly afflicted with very vivid and strong Force visions. In 85 BBY, Sifo Dyas received a Force vision of a deadly fire that engulfs an entire planet. Now, the Jedi Order had a policy of ignoring these visions, as they oftentimes could be misleading and could also generate fear, which could lead to the dark side. But Dooku and Sifo Dyas go behind the Council's back and further investigate this vision and find out that what they're seeing is actually a disaster unfolding on the planet known as Protobranch, an agricultural world. The Jedi would assemble a small team and travel to the world just in time for a massive solar storm to engulf the planet. Sifo Dyas and Dooku are part of this team, and they barely manage to survive the horrible disaster. Unfortunately, the local populace would all perish because of the Jedi's hesitation and delay. No one was evacuated, and the majority of the planet was destroyed. This event would start to really change Dooku's view of the Jedi. He lost a lot of respect for the Order because he viewed them as an organization that had this very powerful foresight ability, but refused to use it, and as a result, all of these people died and suffered. He also lost respect for the Republic, who was more worried about the agricultural operations on the planet than the people actually living there. More importantly, Count Dooku realized that Force visions were a valid thing to interpret, and if you had the right resources and action plan in place, you could save a lot of lives and prevent disasters like the Protobranch solar flare. And it's kind of this mindset that would lead Dooku closer and closer to the path of the dark side. I mean, the Jedi were technically right about the dangers of prophecies. But it should be mentioned that Dooku took this path not out of selfishness or for seeking power or even, fear of his own safety, but a desire to protect innocent people and prevent further disasters. Count Dooku would continue his career in the Jedi Temple, quickly reaching the rank of Jedi Knight and eventually becoming the master of Qui-Gon Jinn, his second Padawan. During this period of time, Count Dooku would become obsessed with a specific Jedi holocron full of ancient prophecies. One day, while in the archives together, the young Qui-Gon Jinn asked his master about a specific holocron Dooku's face flashed in anger, revealing the deeply seated emotions he had for the object. Dooku would go on to explain that Jedi prophecies weren't really studied anymore by the Order because of the danger that they held, and that oftentimes visions could be misinterpreted and that could lead to the dark side. But of course, this was a company line and not something that Dooku wholly believed. It's clear that during this time Dooku gained knowledge, or perhaps even started having his own visions of the turbulent times that would come during the Clone Wars. Dooku was far from the only one to have such visions. Sifo Dyas is the most famous example of this. He would end up contracting the Kaminoans to build the clone army because of his visions of war. Pong Krell, another Jedi Master, also fell to the dark side and betrayed the Republic because of his visions of the conflict. Yoda, Mace Windu, and even Anakin Skywalker, to a certain extent, all had their own separate visions. If we take a look at what we know about Dooku, his kind of shaky foundation because of how horrible his father was to him, his prior experiences with the accuracy of Sifo Dyas' vision, and what happens when the Jedi do not move swiftly enough to act on them. It only makes sense that Dooku would take action after seeing these new prophecies he's seen about the destruction of the Republic and the Jedi. Both in canon and legends, Dooku would grow increasingly disillusioned with how the Jedi Order was acting and how subservient they had become to the Republic. In Legends, the event that truly broke Dooku was the death of his Padawan, Qui-Gon Jinn, during the Naboo blockade incident, when the Republic utterly failed to preserve the rule of law, forcing the Jedi to step into a situation they really didn't have the resources to handle. Then there was the Battle of Galadron, when the Death Watch Mandalorian group tricked the Jedi into attacking their foe, a group of true Mandalorians. This would lead to a deadly skirmish, needlessly killing several Mandalorians and Jedi. Dooku was the leader of that mission, and in the aftermath, he finally understood just how destructive the Jedi had become when they chose to bow down as servants to the Republic. In canon, there were several different incidents that would really shake Dooku's belief in the Republic. A lot of those incidents happened in the Outer Rim, where he was sent on patrols and missions all the time. In the Outer Rim, the Republic's lack of political and economic investment had led to a truly dreadful and lawless and corrupt environment. On one mission, Dooku and a young Qui-Gon Jinn were sent to aid Senator Dagonet, one of the most senior members of the Republic Senate. His son had been captured by local bandits, and the Jedi were sent to extract him and bring him to safety. When the Jedi landed, they saw a completely downtrodden wasteland. Industrialization had completely ravaged the planet's surface, and it was clear very little economic activity was going on here, and the local people barely had enough food to survive. The Jedi end up meeting with the captors, who described Senator Dagonet as a corrupt individual who neglected his people. And even the senator's son didn't blame these civilians for acting so rashly and kidnapping him.
Have you been treated well?
For a prisoner, yes.
Your ordeal will soon be over.
It's not much of an ordeal. Not compared to how these people are living. How could my father allow this to happen to his people?
You don't blame them for abducting you?
What choice do they have?
Senator Dagonet would arrive shortly after with a squad of soldiers. He bribed a local with a piece of bread for the information. Dagonet would proceed to command the Jedi to apprehend the kidnappers as if they were some simple attack hounds. This obviously does not sit well with Dooku.
Step aside, Jedi. We cannot. You serve the Senate. No. We serve the people of this republic.
Officially speaking, Dooku should have followed Jedi protocol. These civilians, even if they had been wronged by Senator Dagonet, had committed a pretty big crime by kidnapping a person. Whatever wrongdoing the senator had done, it would need to be exposed in a Senate hearing or some kind of judicial investigation. But Dooku was realistic. He knew that such a case could be swept under the table by the Republic's massive bureaucratic machine, or worse, corruption. And Dooku feels sympathy for the civilians of the planet, and perhaps the aristocratic Dagonet reminds him more than a little of his own father that scorned him. And so Dooku refuses to stand down, and instead attempts to protect the kidnappers as the senator's guards open fire on them. After the first exchange of blaster fire, the senator reveals his true intentions.
I will destroy this town and make an example of it. And many others. None shall defy me, not even you, Master Jedi.
Faced with this type of pure evil, what else could Dooku do but try to end this tyrant who is pretending to be an elected official? Even as a Jedi, he was powerless against one of the oldest serving members of the Senate in the political system, and if the Republic is aiding and protecting such vile individuals, then how could the Jedi serve such a corrupt institution?
Corruption like yours must be eradicated.
Now, if it wasn't for his Padawan's quick thinking, I think Dooku would have beheaded Senator Dagonet, and that would have created a huge diplomatic incident. But luckily, cooler heads do prevail, and the senator is scared straight, and his son pledges to put more attention towards the welfare of the people on this planet. When things cool down, Dooku exchanges some words with his Padawan.
Your actions saved many lives today.
Just thinking in the moment, Master.
Well then, you're a much wiser man than I, Qui-Gon Jinn.
Thanks to your teachings.
We rarely see this side of Dooku, especially in this stage of his life where he's already on the path to the dark side. The things he's witnessed, the corruption and ineptitude of the Jedi and the Republic he served, has left him bitter, cynical, and full of anger. But I think Dooku's still smart enough to realize that, he's a bit tainted, and that his young Padawan is quite wise to still have hope, to be optimistic, to try to solve situations by using the Jedi way. Qui-Gon Jinn's dedication to the Jedi Code is something that Dooku probably still longs for, and he hasn't completely abandoned the Jedi at this point. Dooku would continue to slip further into the darkness, though, as the Republic became more and more reliant on the Jedi Order to keep order. It soon became very obvious that the Jedi Order was propping up many corrupt and vile politicians who exploited their own people and selfishly hoarded resources for their own gain. I do think Dooku is a bit naive, and perhaps obsessed in this idea of a perfect system without corruption. It's not to defend the Republic's excesses and, corruption and just overall bureaucratic inefficiencies. There were a lot of problems here, but Dooku's actions were kind of extreme ultimately. The reality is the Republic is never a perfect system. Its economic system didn't provide equally for everyone. Its political system heavily favored the core regions over the Outer Rim. But it was by far the least bad political system in the galaxy had up until this point. The Galactic Empire that Dooku would help bring to power was far more inefficient and cruel, and led to even worse outcomes for the average individual. The Rakan Infinite Empire that preceded the Old Republic turned the majority of the galaxy's population into slaves. The Republic was a necessary evil. It was a continuously sinking ship that was only kept afloat by idealistic individuals like his Padawan Qui-Gon Jinn, who acknowledged the corruption and ineffectiveness of the Republic system, but did whatever he could in order to bring peace and fairness in the path that he walked. Qui-Gon Jinn was content with trying to do good in the small corner of the galaxy that he inhabited. He didn't have lofty goals of changing the galaxy, bringing peace and prosperity to everyone. Dooku's ego was perhaps too large. He assumed that he had a responsibility and the power to effect change at the galactic level. He failed to settle for the small daily victories that he realistically as a Jedi could achieve. He wanted to eliminate corruption completely, without realizing that unfortunately this was an essential part of being a human. Those who seek massive change, who promise utopia, oftentimes become transfixed on the end goal they want to achieve without realizing the monster they've become while trying to achieve those goals. And I think that's a lesson we all really need to learn. In today's world of social media and just the crazy amount of information that bombards us, it's easy to see the negatives in our political system, in our culture, in our institutions. It's easy to say democracy is stupid, it doesn't work. It's easy to say that the capitalist engine that fuels our economy is unfair, or that the socialist government programs we have are inefficient. Now, a lot of this negativity also fuels extreme movements like the separatist movement that Count Dooku would be behind. And the problem with these extreme movements is they don't see the positive sides of the institutions they're trying to tear down. And more importantly, they don't really have a concrete plan on how they're going to replace these institutions and try to do better. And that's because extreme movements are oftentimes driven by emotion, by anger, by a lack of clear-headed thinking and pragmatic thinking. Count Dooku was not an evil man, or at least he didn't set out to be one. But his fear and inability to cope with the chaos that naturally comes with the world led him to becoming the very evil he had promised to fight. It's an extremely tragic story. In the last years of the Republic, in the chaos that was consuming the galaxy, it was very difficult to be a Jedi. I think most individuals failed not because they were bad people, but because of the situation the Jedi were placed in. Only individuals that were completely pure, like Qui-Gon Jinn, really could survive with a relatively clean legacy. And that was again because of his focus on the little things, on trying to solve whatever problems that were in front of him instead of the larger picture ideas. And I think that, again, this is something we all could really learn from in this really toxic political environment we're living in today. First, look locally at your neighbors, at your friends, try to help them rather than go on the internet and create all of this nonsense with people you don't even understand or really know. I think Dooku's ambition and just his ability to do things well is what ultimately led him astray as well. Some people might call it arrogance, but again, I feel like he had a sense of duty because of his skills, because of his experience to actually step up and do something. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. As usual, my name is Alan, reminding you that my allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy. I'll see you next time.